Alignment is gold. This is you, running at full speed, with a big idea and a direction to pursue. This is you and your team. When your company is small, you're aligned, so you're making progress. How much progress? Well, if every person is a vector, progress is the sum of all vectors. But let's be real. Perfect alignment doesn't exist. In reality, good alignment looks more like that. Still, if we add all vectors together, that's quite a lot of progress. And when your team is aligned, you create something very precious. You create true believers. New talent wants to work with you. New customers want to buy from you. Investors want to back you. When everyone inside and outside your company aligns to the same goal, your company grows and you create more impact. But alignment is hard. As your company grows, keeping everyone rowing in the same direction becomes tough and expensive problems start to loom. Inside, if people don't share the same priorities, it's hard to work together and projects fail or just don't get done. From the outside, if your direction is unclear, recruits and partners don't want to join and product adoption is slow. What do I mean by product adoption is slow? I mean this. Although you know that people need your product, they don't notice it. How frustrating. Your strategy is just as good as people's ability to understand and participate in it. Misalignment puts a brake on progress and can even lead to regression. Since the 1950s, we have found many ways to align people, all traditional techniques from the industrial age, designed to command and control. And they're fantastic. If you think of your company as a machine and people as little more than cogs in a wheel. But with the rise of employee empowerment and the need for more meaningful, agile, and sustainable companies, we need a better way to align and mobilize people. So, you need a story, they say. Storytelling is the latest thing on the CEO strategic alignment stack. That's why you'll hear people say, "What's our story?" That's right. What is your story? That's why investors want you to tell a story. Storytelling is the most underrated skill, says Ben Horowitz, co-founder of venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, early investors in Airbnb, Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter. That's why when you sell commodities like coffee, the real difference is the story. And that's why there are dozens of business books on how to tell a story. And that's why me too, I said, you need a story. Since 2001, I have guided hundreds of business leaders in telling their stories. But in looking for ways to build better companies, I found that storytelling was much harder than it looks, simply because, like many people, I was getting it wrong. In fact, one more story won't fix your company. First, your company doesn't have a story. Your company has many stories. As you can see in this example, these are just 10 of the most common stories in a business. And if your stories don't make sense together, you don't provide enough focus to people. You don't align and mobilize them, and your company will struggle. As a result, people work in silos, pushing and pulling in conflicting directions. In this case, most of us believe that the solution is to craft one more story as a branding layer around the company. But this is like putting lipstick on a pig. Thinking of your story as marketing only is a trap and a dangerous one. Inside and outside, people will lose trust if they see the gap between what your branding says and what your company does. If you see yourself in the situation I faced, this is not your fault, and you're not alone. This is the default mode of most companies, from two-people businesses to large organizations. And the larger the organization, the bigger the consequence. This is a company of about 1,000 people. Research shows that in this type of company, an average of only 10% of people understand where the company is going. 10%. How do you expect people to adapt to change and make consistent decisions? This creates expensive problems. This default mode is what I call Business Storytelling 1.0. And Business Storytelling 1.0 is dead. What should we do then? Build a strategic narrative instead. Business leaders who build impactful companies don't just tell better stories. They build a new narrative. Then, they use it as a force to align and mobilize people with a new way to think and act in their market category. When Scott and Alice Svensson started Mod Pizza in 2008, the last thing the world needed was yet another pizza place. So, they built Mod Pizza on a new narrative. Pizza as a platform for addressing societal challenges. In 2021, Mod celebrated the opening of its 500th store and granted over $750,000 to employees in crisis, amongst many other key initiatives. In 2007, Mark Frohnmayer, founder of Archimoto, was tired of adding to traffic and CO2 emissions by driving his multi-ton SUV for all of his simple trips. He wanted a light footprint electric vehicle that was affordable, fun, and dialed for every day. But he couldn't find it. Thus, he built a new narrative, a public company and a platform for urban mobility, the FUV, Fun Utility Vehicle. When he was 22, Blair Enns refused to pitch as a way to sell in the creative industry. He founded Win Without Pitching on a new narrative. You can deliver better work and be more profitable without giving your ideas for free. Today, Blair and his team lead a movement to change the way creative services are sold and bought one agency at a time. Scott and Alice Svensson, Mark Frohnmayer, and Blair Enns have this in common. Their strategy is to build a new narrative. So, if you remember one thing about this ebook, remember this diagram. On the left side, you have the old model, where we use stories as an afterthought to clarify the complexity of the company, one piece of the organization at a time. Notice how your business strategy competes for attention with many other sources of information and stories. On the right, you can see how modern founders start by building a new narrative about how we should think and act differently in a market category. They build their strategic narrative at the core of everything and then use it as a filter to align everything else consistently with it. Remember, their strategy is to build a new narrative. How is that different from telling stories then? People will pay for a story, but people will die for a narrative. Did you notice? Whether social, political, religious, business, or economic, any significant movement has a strong narrative at its core. Stories engage. To engage is to hold the attention of someone, especially at length. Narratives mobilize. To mobilize is to bring people together for action. Stories are closed-ended. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Narratives are open-ended. They have a beginning, a middle, but no predetermined end. And therefore, we want to solve this ourselves. We tell stories, so a story has an audience. We enact narratives, so a narrative has participants. To summarize, a strategic narrative shifts the way we think and makes people take extraordinary measures. For businesses, the 5 powers of a strategic narrative are: 1. Differentiation. Your strategic narrative is a chance to disagree with your competitors. 2. Adoption. Your strategic narrative frames why people should get your product now. It creates urgency. 3. Decision. Your strategic narrative is a powerful filter to decide what aligns with your strategy or not. 4. Purpose. If your strategic narrative defends a cause, it will rally people to support your efforts and be part of a movement. 5. Trust. Investors and partners want to work with companies with a strong strategic narrative because they're twice as likely to cause market disruption. But here's the thing. Business leaders think of storytelling mainly as an act of literature. However, building a new strategic narrative is an act of leadership. Here are 10 principles to turn your organization into a source of inspiration few can resist, and some of the leaders who applied them successfully. Tell people how you started. To be excited about your company, people need to know why you were excited about it in the first place. Companies with a clear sense of purpose outperform by a factor of 10. Challenge what everybody else accepts as truth. You will animate people if your strategic narrative is distinctive and novel. A different perspective is a chance to disagree with your competitors. Advertise your beliefs before you advertise your product. You can only sell what you do if, first, people believe why it matters. Your strategy is only as good as people's ability to believe in it. Co-create your strategic narrative. When people have their fingerprints on a strategic narrative they built together, it becomes their own. They know what to do, figure things out, and need less oversight. Shrink the brag zone. If your narrative is all about your company and your product first, it will sound narrow and uninspiring. On the other hand, when people feel heard, they'll find an active role in your narrative. Say the thing you are afraid to say. Speak the truth. People will trust you for saying and doing what they wanted to say and do. Say it humanly, without bullshit. Your words matter. They mobilize people. They sell your ideas and your products too. The good ones can be painful to find, but powerful to own. Repeat yourself consistently. What is new is always rejected the first time. Repetition helps people get from knowing to believing to acting. Serve your community. If you craft a narrative about how everybody can benefit from what you do, everybody will want you to succeed. They will want to participate. Lead with passion. You can't inspire people around you and make things happen with a lukewarm heart. These business leaders frame and activate their company strategy with a shared narrative that they ground in the reasons why the world is better off as a result of their company's existence. Their strategic narrative brings all stakeholders along to take action, and as a result, they thrive. Their path might not be yours. Alignment takes time, courage, and a change in the way you do business. Will you follow their steps? It's up to you to decide. It's time for action. Visit strategicnarrative.com today.